Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben. So a bunch of Koreans kept winning awards at the Oscars the other week for a movie called Parasite, and I'm going to guess that a whole lot of people were like, what the hell is going on here? Who are these people taking out films like The Irishman, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Joker for the best awards of the night, namely Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay? I think this moment was seen by many as a historical moment, and the arrival of the South Koreans on the Hollywood scene. But the truth is that while yes, it is a very significant moment as South Koreans took home the major awards at the Oscars, South Koreans, and yes, I'm saying this as a bit of a rabid fan of East Asian cinema, have been making amazing films for decades. Actually, the person behind the film is a man by the name of Bong Joon-ho, a master filmmaker and someone who I grew up watching as a kid. So I thought that for those who might be interested, perhaps those who watched and enjoyed Parasite, in today's video I'd list some other South Korean movies that you might find worth a watch. Now, I admittedly am not up to date, as over the past 5 to 7 years I haven't been as engaged with South Korean film, but I'm going to include some of my favorite films in this video. And why not start with Bong Joon-ho himself, as the first film I'm including on this list is my favorite film that he's done, and it's a movie that many of you might actually have either heard of or even seen. It's called The Host. The 2006 monster movie tells the story of a giant amphibious creature that emerges from the Han River as a result of the American military dumping chemicals into its waters. But it was funny, right? Anyway, the monster terrorizes the populace, ravaging through the streets and killing people indiscriminately. The creature eventually abducts a young girl, and it's up to her father, Park Gong-doo, a dim, clumsy, lazy snack bar vendor, to track the monster down and rescue his daughter. There's a lot of things that I really like about this film. First, it never takes itself too seriously as a monster film. It doesn't overdo it with the monster and make it some titanic beast, and most of all, it's irreverent and doesn't care who it offends or disturbs. No one is safe. The Host, despite being a really good monster movie in its own right, doesn't try to blow you away with big blockbuster action the way most monster movies do. Instead, it's a really smart film, and it's one that audiences connect with. Best of all, the man who plays the main character is an actor by the name of Song Kang-ho, who is one of my favorite actors and someone who I think is one of the best actors in the world. What I really like about Song Kang-ho is that he mixes physical comedy and slapstick with quality dramatic acting rather seamlessly, and he's just so entertaining to watch, especially when he's facing down a deadly monster. Now, if you liked Parasite and end up liking The Host, then you probably are just a Bong Joon-ho kind of person. And thus for you, I might recommend watching a movie called Memories of Murder. The 2003 film tells the story of South Korea's first known serial killer, whose crimes took place between 1986 and 1991 in Hwasong, Gyeonggi province. Yeah, I know I just butchered that pronunciation and insulted an entire country where this video was meant to show respect to South Korea, but anyways, yeah, it's a really good film. Once again, the film stars Song Kang-ho, the same actor from The Host, as Park Do-man, the detective in charge of solving the murders. But his small-town police department isn't exactly used to solving serious cases, and so the film follows him as he tries to solve the case using antiquated and even incorrect methods to investigate leads and collect evidence, including his self-proclaimed skills for reading eyes. Eventually, Park is joined on the case by a more by-the-book detective from the big city, and the two try to find the culprit. Once again, true to Bong Joon-ho's signature style, despite tackling a very serious subject matter, the film never takes itself too seriously and has plenty of lighthearted moments. Though I suppose serial killer, lighthearted, it's kind of weird. But I mean, if you hate dropkicks, you hate pure joy. If Bong Joon-ho's rather idiosyncratic humorous style isn't your thing, but you want to watch a good serial killer film, as in if that's your go-to genre, you friggin' lunatic, then I'd probably recommend a 2008 film called The Chaser, which is based on the real-life South Korean serial killer Yoo Young-chul, who murdered 20 people, a mix of prostitutes and wealthy old men, between 2003 and 2004. The film, directed by Na Hong-jin, follows ex-police detective turned pimp Yeom Jung-ho, played by Kim Yoon-suk, as he tries to track down the killer behind the disappearance of the women who work for him. Now, before you just assume that I'm into creepy films here, The Chaser is actually a pretty universally renowned film and is one of the most gripping, suspenseful films I've ever seen. Actually, back in 2008 when it came out, Warner Brothers bought the remake rights to the film, and it was rumored that Leo DiCaprio was in line to star in the Hollywood version, though the remake obviously has yet to come to fruition. Okay, we have to talk about Park Chan-wook, another master director and surely one of the world's greatest living filmmakers. He's also someone you might have heard of as he's been introduced to the West before with his 2013 film Stoker. Or you might have just seen his masterpiece Oldboy, one of the best films ever made. Now, Oldboy is definitely not for everyone. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever met someone who's watched the film and hasn't reacted all like, what the just happened? But I've also never met someone who wasn't completely blown away by the film. The 2003 movie tells the story of a businessman named Oh Dae-soo, played by the very talented actor Choi Min-sik, who ends up getting kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years, then randomly released, and he has to figure out the reason that he was in prison within 5 days in order to save the life of his new friend Mi-do, all the while also trying to find his daughter, who lost contact with him during his imprisonment. Listen, there's just too much here to explain in terms of Oldboy's plot. Just watch the movie and yeah, you probably still won't get it, but you will enjoy it if you can stomach it. And honestly, when it comes to being able to stomach the gore, and compared to some of the Japanese films I've seen, it's not that bad. For the record, Oldboy is currently ranked number 70 on IMDb's top 250 films of all time. Now, while some of you might have seen Oldboy already, you might not have known that the film is actually the second film in a series of films by Park Chan-wook known as his Vengeance trilogy, with each film in the series being related thematically, not narratively. The first film, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, is the one I'll recommend here. Again, the film probably isn't for those with sensitive stomachs, but it follows the character of Ryu, a deaf-mute factory worker who goes to extreme lengths to try and save his sister, who is in need of a kidney transplant, including dealing in the black market and kidnapping the daughter of his former boss's friend. Okay, for the next film on this list, I think I should probably recommend something a little bit less violent before y'all grow suspicious of me, but the good news is that we can stick with Park Chan-wook, because he did a bit of an atypical film relative to his entire cinematic canon with his 2006 film I'm a Cyborg, But That's Okay. Now, this is a romantic comedy, but before you click off in anger, this is South Korea we're talking about, and in South Korean cinema, romantic comedies can actually often be good. The film tells the story of a girl, Cha Young-gun, played by Im Soo-jung, who thinks she's a combat cyborg and ends up institutionalized for what was viewed as a suicide attempt, but in reality was just her attempt to recharge herself, being that in her mind, she's a cyborg. In the mental hospital, she ends up falling in love with another patient named Park Il-soon, played by world-famous South Korean pop star Rain, who believes he can steal other people's souls. Which is absolute BS, because we all know the only person who can steal people's souls is the glorious leader Kim Jong-un. But anyways, that plot alone, combat cyborg guy who thinks he can steal people's souls, love, mental hospital, should sell you on the film. But in any case, I guarantee you that it won't be like any film you've ever seen. For a more straightforward South Korean romantic comedy, I might go with 2001 film My Sassy Girl, directed by Kwak Jae-young. The movie follows Yeon-woo, a down-on-his-romantic-luck college student who, on the way to visit his aunt, saves a drunk girl from an oncoming train, which starts a series of events that find the well-meaning Yeon-woo and the girl developing a relationship as she gets him into trouble over and over again. Now again, you might think that that just sounds like the dumb plot to some stupid romantic comedy, but trust me, just watch the film, it's actually really well put together. Of course, the 2008 Hollywood remake of the film turned out rather poor, as for whatever reason, Hollywood can't do romantic comedies. Maybe because filmmakers in Hollywood aren't really into the whole love and consent thing. But anyway, back to Chan-wook Park for a second, because before we move on from him, I have to mention my favorite film of his, a 2009 vampire film entitled Thirst. Now, personally, I'm not really into the whole vampire film thing, Dracula, Twilight, bleh. Plus, it hits a little bit too close to home for me. But honestly, there have been a few good ones over the years, and in my opinion, Thirst is the very best of them. The film follows Sang-hyun, another character played by Song Kang-ho, as a Catholic priest who, while working at a hospital, volunteers himself as a test subject for an experiment to find a vaccine for a deadly virus. Long story short, the experiment fails and he turns into a human blood-craving vampire. As Sang-hyun succumbs to vampirism, he is forced to veer from his priestly ways, and he must resist his newfound thirst, all the while falling in love with his friend's wife, Tae-ju, played by Kim Ok-bin. Anyway, let's move on to action films because South Korea does those really well too. My favorite is probably a film called A Bittersweet Life, a 2005 movie directed by Kim Ji-woon, another top South Korean director. The film's plot concerns Kim Sun-woo, played by Lee Byung-hyun, an awesome actor who you might know as Storm Shadow from Hollywood's G.I. Joe films. Sun-woo is an enforcer for crime boss Kang, who assigns Sun-woo to shadow his mistress Hee-soo to find out if she's having an affair. Sun-woo does so, and indeed he finds Hee-soo cheating with her lover. But out of his own newfound affection for Hee-soo, he promises not to tell as long as they cut off the affair. When Kang finds out about Sun-woo's betrayal, it initiates a series of events that lead Sun-woo down a road of bullet-spraying vengeance. A Bittersweet Life is a really fun movie. It's got a really cool style with interesting characters and some slick gun kata. Finally, the last movie I want to include on this list is Kim Ji-woon's The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. The film takes place in 1939 Manchuria in the months leading up to World War II and follows three characters. Park Chang-yi, aka The Bad, a bandit/hitman who is hired to acquire a treasure map from a Japanese official on a train. Yoon Tae-gu, aka The Weird, a thief who steals the map before Chang-yi can get his hands on it. And Park Do-won, aka The Good, a bounty hunter after Park Chang-yi. The film features a series of chases and shootouts as the three characters pursue the map and each other in a ridiculous over-the-top action-adventure Asian Western starring three of South Korea's coolest and most talented stars in Song Kang-ho, Lee Byung-hyun, and Jung Woo-sung, the first two of whom star in other movies on this list. Anyway, those are some South Korean films I suggest you check out, but I could have listed many, many more. Heck, I didn't even get to director Kim Ki-duk's films, though that's mostly because many of his movies are deeply metaphorical and certainly not to everyone's tastes. Still, Parasite winning the top Oscars is no fluke. South Korea has one of the world's best film industries, and if you don't check out some of the films on this list, you are truly missing out. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a like in the comments down below. Let me know the South Korean movies that you've seen and loved, or what you think about any of the movies on this list if you've seen any of them. By the way, I know that I butchered quite a few names in this video. Don't have a background in the South Korean language. I have a little bit of a background in the Chinese language, and I kind of use that to try to pronounce the names. But I know I absolutely destroyed some of them, and I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I was just trying my best. But definitely do not repeat the pronunciations that I used in this video, especially for people's names. They're not good, and I apologize for that. Anyways, please do subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.